speak an insensitivity of this regime. You'll recall that Rowley's PNM held its local government reform consultation early in their term, costing more than $10 million. And 5 years later, the system is even more deformed and archaic. More autonomy means more bureaucracy, thanks to Kazim, Frankie, and Imbo. There is systemic tardiness in releases of funds. Funding for development programs is typically allocated near the end or close to the fourth quarter of the fiscal year. There continues to be draconian and drastic cuts in the expenditures for development projects and other essentials. But funding is secured to outfit buildings, commercial properties, and business of all rentals, all recusals, and family. The glaring disparity and discrimination in the disbursement of scarce resources is also another critical factor which speaks to the insincerity and contempt, especially for UNC-based regional corporations. The deep vein of contempt by this government was echoed recently in Parliament, where in the Finance Committee meeting, Minister Imbo chided the Works Minister for listening to the requests made by opposition members for road works in their respective communities. He said, those people now come, and he had a list before them, encouraging the minister not to take the requests from newly elected members of parliament. I support the leader of opposition's call to fight this discrimination and injustice head-on at all legal means. Brothers and sisters, we at the Mayaro-Rio Clara Regional Corporation suffered severe cuts in our allocation by more than $7 million for fiscal 2020-2021. Our development program fell by over $4 million. That is, and it's down to now $10 million. It's a mere allocation of $1 million for each electoral district to undertake roads, bridges, drainage, etc. 800,000 allocated for an average 17 recreation grounds and facilities. No allocation for maintenance of cemeteries. A mere $111,000 allocated for materials and supplies, for maintenance of state traces and local roads. Out of a fleet of 78 vehicles, 65 being diesel-based, the allocation and maintenance of vehicles inclusive of fuel only is over $270,000. The tragic reality is that our annual fuel bill is at an average of over $300,000. What will happen to us when those NP gas stations are privatized and the prices of diesel increases? Local government tourism programs in a diverse region with high potential for local tourism development and its spin-off activities, nothing. An area with over 17 miles of beach, nothing for tourism. Nothing for repairs and maintenance of equipment. Brothers and sisters, it is no secret that this hopeless and dinosauric government continues to mamaga its way, pandering to the system, to the sympathy vote. In 2015, they came to Mayaro and proclaimed, more for Mayaro. 5 years and 3 months later, our roads are in a deplorable state. Agriculture has been sidelined. The first Galeota energy port and logistic hub built by a PP government has been abandoned with no plan to have it fully operational. The 2 fish landing facilities built under our tenure has been left to rot and deteriorate while the fisher folks fight for survival. Under the PP government, we were establishing economic zones and growth poles to diversify the economy and economic activities. The only thing diversified under the PNM is failure in a different form. It pains me to read about the plight of so many disadvantaged children in my region and the country at large, who still cannot access and acquire modern learning devices and or laptops and tablets for their online learning. And this is as a result of a spiteful, vicious, and treacherous policy of the PNM to scrap the laptop program when they came into office. Where's the priority of this government? After raiding the HFS, the HSF, they could not budget sufficiently, knowing that the new norm would be online for our children. Now, why we like beggars and pipers have to be begging every parlor, every mini-mart for tablets? They collected over 20,000 tablets, and to date, only 650 delivered. They don't even have a system to share the tablets. This reminds me of the first cabinet note for the establishment of a Children Life Fund in 2010 under Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. The then Prime Minister and her ministers contributed 5 to 10% of their salaries towards life-saving surgeries and other medical care for needy children. Rowley and his minions in opposition did not even give a dinner. My brothers and sisters, as our party moves forward in preserving the system of democracy by holding its internal election on 6 December, I wish to urge you. 1, be respectful to all nominees. Be responsible and orderly as you campaign for your candidate of your choice. Be mindful that these processes are meant to unify and solidify our membership. Do not be influenced in divisive, racist, and uncivil rants and action, which can only bring our party and leadership into disrepute. This is not the first internal election, and surely it would not be the last. As we continue to build, give hope, and restructure our framework going forward, what are the facts in this election? What are the options before us? Our party has made significant strides under the leader of Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. Our membership has grown to 100,000. There are more constituency executives. National congresses are convened. Most importantly, we have seen a transition from the elders to an increase of active youth participation, which is evident in the councils and parliament. Kamla Persad-Bissessar has been bold, daring, courageous to make this move against all odds and detractors. Our party is no longer stigmatized and stereotyped as being south of the Caroni Bridge. We are not perfect and may never be. But at all times we must strive towards perfection and build one another together. To do otherwise is to fail. Let me say unconditionally, without reservation, that Kamla Persad-Bissessar has been a distinguished leader, a unifying force, a stateswoman, a transformational tower of strength, compassionate, caring, and humble. She has been tried, tested, and proven to be up to the task. She is charismatic and connected to the membership, and she is all-embracing as seen by so many young talent which she has harnessed in the party. Kamla. Let me tell you what Kamla means. K, knowledgeable on all current affairs and is still a force in parliament and party. A, articulate, witty, and of sound mind and character. M, motherly and very warm-hearted. In times of disasters, emergencies, and anything for children and vulnerable families, count on Kamla. L, loving and very affectionate, legally versatile in her analysis of issues and laws. Ageless and politically priceless, because she is still very much valued. Of course, she needs a strong team of NATEX members to fulfill their roles and responsibilities to our party. There will come a time when she will move on. But I tell you, brothers and sisters, the time is not yet. This is not a time to bend to the desperate cries of those pretenders who have not sweat and sacrificed for our party but want leadership on a platter. Stand firm with our leader, our unifier, our magnet, our peace and stability, Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Long live the UNC. Long live our political leader, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Long live Trinidad and Tobago. And may God bless us all.
Thank you, Brother Raymond, for your powerful words. Next, our next contributor is a well-known son of San Fernando and a brilliant young lawyer. He battled the PNM bravely on our behalf in the Senate, in the law courts, on the campaign trail, and he continues to labor with us here tonight. Let us give a UNC welcome to Brother Sean Sobers.
Good evening to the Honorable Political Leader, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa of Senior Council, Honorable members of both Houses of Parliament, members of the National Executive, and to all UNC members. This being my very first public appearance since the general elections, I would also like to say a special good evening to all the people of San Fernando West. I would also like to wholeheartedly thank all of you in San Fernando West for your unwavering support during and after the campaign has ended. Your phone calls and messages of love have unimaginably touched me. To my campaign team, your sacrifices over the last couple of months have earned my fervent respect and immense adoration. My journey with you cannot be underscored by mere words. I am truly grateful for your support. Being a candidate in such a diverse constituency was an experience I will truly cherish. I have interacted with so many great persons, witnessed so many sobering events, and embraced many different people, attesting to the melting pot that is San Fernando West. This has been an experience that I will never forget. No matter where my journey in life takes me, I stand committed to all of you to assist in any way that I can. I continue to grow, know, and love my city, my home, my neighbors in San Fernando. In furtherance of that commitment, and our party's commitment, not only in San Fernando West, but throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, our party has continued its outreach, with many MPs, councillors, and activists maintaining their presence on the ground, adhering to our political leaders' message to serve the people, serve the people, serve the people. As the journey continues, we have moved from a grueling general election into an internal election. Some persons have called for free and fair elections, and in the United National Congress, that is exactly what will happen. Members should expect no different, as the UNC remains a party anchored to democracy, and all persons, from captain to cook, will be treated with respect and fairly. all forms of elections serve to reinvigorate party machinery and organs that may have been dormant. Internal elections serve as an educational tool for younger members of our party to actively participate in the process, thereby gaining experience that can be harnessed productively in general elections. Our internal elections will demonstrate not only to the naysayers, but to the rest of Trinidad and Tobago that the democratic process is alive and well at all levels in our party. As we are on the topic of internal elections, I would like to indicate, in my humble experience, all elections should be about issues, character, and progression. It should never be about personalities and scandal. While I stand here this evening, I may not be able to speak on the character of anyone else because of my lack of relations, but I can definitely speak on the character of my political leader, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa. My friends, I can vividly recall receiving a phone call from our political leader to attend a caucus meeting at her home. I remember upon entering the room, I was humbled by the gathering, as seated around an oval-shaped table were MPs, senators, and other technocrats. There was no head and there was no tail. Everyone sat equally. There was a discussion taking place on a piece of criminal legislation as the government had embarked upon an aggressive criminal justice legislative reform. Because of my experience in criminal matters, I was invited to participate. Whilst there, I saw views fielded from all persons, votes taken, and consensus had before any formal position was adopted. Whilst all this was taking place, I thought, as political leader, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa would be seated at the head of the table. Well, boy, was I wrong, as she was in the middle of everyone, well engaged and quite sharply taking part in the discussion. The final product was listening and seeing all the points and discussion that I was a part of as a young person at a tender age of 28 years, being utilized in a debate in the highest office in the land, the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Democracy at its best. Inclusion of young people at its best. Not only a promise being fulfilled. As a young person, I was present, not as a token. I was respected, my views were respected and manifested in the debate. A true testament of a good leader who listened and then led. No truer testament to democracy being alive and well than issues being discussed and a vote being taken and a majority decision being adopted. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa continues to demonstrate that young people such as myself are recognized for no other reason than diligence. She continues to ensure that our opinions are valued and there is consensus of decisions, all of which continue to form my reasons of commitment to her and the United National Congress. My friends, at the end of 2018, in Mrs. Prasad Bisesa's New Year's message, she said, "The decisions of today will have the greatest effect on the younger generations, the 20, 30, and 40-year-olds. I believe that it is imperative that the United National Congress gives them the opportunity to be in government and make decisions to chart their own future. They have the competence, intelligence, and ability, and we must give them the support. We must present new faces, new names, diverse backgrounds, new ideas, and move our party and country forwards, never backwards." I believe those words. The fact that I served as a candidate alongside many other young persons is testament that our leader was honest in what she wrote. I continue to thank her for keeping her word. As December 6th approaches, I urge all of you to conduct yourselves in a manner that represents our party honorably. Our membership is in need of it. Our party requires it, and our nation demands it. Thank you.
Let's hear it again for Brother Sean Sobers. Sean is just one example of the bright young people who joined our great party because they were inspired by the leadership of the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Next, we will hear from a bold and dynamic senator who has proven to be a powerhouse in the parliament. He is not afraid to call a spade, and he has fearlessly gone head-to-head with the PNM during debates. Please put your hands together for Senator Damian Lyda.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to recognize tonight our beloved political leader, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, all of my colleagues that are here tonight joining us, and all of our friends, families, and supporters here on the virtual tonight. We welcome you and we say to you good night. During her acceptance speech as Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris quoted the words of the late Senator John Lewis, where she stated, and I quote, Congressman John Lewis, before his passing, wrote, "Democracy is not a state, it is an act." Vice President-elect Harris went on to explain, and I quote, and what he meant was that America's democracy is not guaranteed. She stated, it is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it, to guard it, and never take it for granted. And protecting our democracy takes struggle. It takes sacrifice. There is joy in it, and there is progress, because we, the people, have the power to build a better future. End quote. Brothers and sisters, this is a profound quote, and it resonated within me as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, because our nation faces its biggest challenge in sustaining its democracy, as well as protecting the democratic and constitutional rights of every citizen of our great nation. For the past 5 years under this PNM government, we have seen democracy buckle to its knees. We have seen a systematic assault on the principles of good governance, transparency, and accountability. A government that circumvents due process, and that after 5 long years refuses to bring the procurement legislation to fruition. We see the wholesale and fire sale of all our country's assets. We see our government purchase 2 military vessels, allegedly costing twice what they should. We see shipments of fuel ending up in a different location from which it was originally intended, almost causing sanctions on this country from the United States of America. We see the implementation of draconian taxes, and now the property tax, the dreaded property tax that is coming to residential, commercial, and believe it or not, to the agricultural lands. Farmers, get ready for it. We see the desecration of the trade union movement. We see the biggest bold-faced lie when a prime minister tells you that he was not going to close Petrotrin. And then in the blink of an eye, poof, 10,000 Petrotrin workers, and by extension, those who depended on Petrotrin, placed on the breadline. And he said it twice, in case you were closing the fridge door. A bold-faced, facetious lie. Now citizens of this country are afraid to close their fridge door. They're afraid to close their washing machine door. They're afraid to close their room door and their front door in case they lost their work. But this government has already signaled that they are coming to chop more jobs through the length and breadth of all the government agencies. They have signaled that they are coming to raise lights, raise water, raise fuel, and impose property tax. This government awards contracts, grants, and assets to friends, family, and financiers, while the process of doing so is veiled in a cloak of secrecy and lacking in transparency. And a mere recusal from cabinet is all that is deemed necessary to make it legitimate. This does not sound like a democracy. This sounds like totalitarianism. This sounds like authoritarianism. This sounds like a dictatorship in the making. Even freedom of speech is ripped from the guts of honest and decent citizens. We saw this when a member of a reputable Chamber of Commerce gave his personal, constructive criticisms about this government on WhatsApp. It was leaked out, and it was followed by an abusive rant on Facebook by our very own project manager. This gentleman was literally forced into an apology for simply speaking his mind. We see the government buy out and use state resources to purchase and control traditional media under the disguise of an official business, yes, yet to spread their PNM propaganda, to trick, fool, and hoodwink this population. This spread of PNM propaganda to hoodwink citizens is exactly the creeping signs of a dictatorship. It was the fascist dictator Adolf Hitler and other well-known dictators, some not too far from our shores, that all used propaganda in traditional media to sway populations' blind support, which carried them into wars and destroyed their economies and societies. Dictators coming on all national television channels for hours every day, feeding the people with false hope and a false narrative, while the countries are pillaged and plundered into bankruptcy. And now, brothers and sisters, right here, in sweet TNT, we see the telltale signs of a building dictatorship. We saw it in the pre-election, in the onset of COVID, a government that was destined for defeat at the polls at the general election, using the COVID pandemic as an opportunity and a vehicle to spread propaganda. Every opportunity, the government would jump on the television, take up hours mamagaing the population about how well they were doing, claiming that to be #1 in the world, according to Oxford. All this while shutting our country down, closing our borders to our very own citizens, and putting thousands of people upon the breadline. But in fact, what was the truth? They were suppressing the numbers through a lack of testing. Imagine, up until the eve of the elections, they had tested only 8,000 persons, and there were less than 200 active cases. A false sense of comfort to the citizens of this country before the election. And then just like that, 1 month after the election, miraculously, majestically, the government goes up to 24,000 tests and over 1,600 active cases. And today, we see the failure of this government by more than 5,000 active cases. So they fooled the nation through their propaganda. But I want to know, where did the COVID come from if our borders were closed? I ask you, brothers and sisters, does this sound like a democracy, or is our country now a dictatorship? Was it only for the lack of testing, my brothers and sisters? Or was the bigger issue the fact that this government has failed to lock down and secure our borders, leaving this nation vulnerable to the uncontrolled influx of illegal immigrants that could be potentially bringing in this virus? Bottom line, national security has failed us at our borders. I can refer back to my contribution in the Senate, in the budget debate, where I indicated that I have seen so many posts on Facebook with Venezuelan fishermen moving through the length and breadth of our country unabated. One can go right now to the constituency of our very own Prime Minister, that of Diego Martin West in Chagaramas, and you will see 8, 9, 10, and up to 18 Venezuelan boats parked mere feet from the shores of our land. It is there. I went and saw it. And I went and saw it again after the Senate, just to make sure. But what gave me comfort is to know that there are many citizens out there, many responsible citizens that continue to expose this, that continue to put it on Facebook. These Venezuelan boats are sailing past Tetron, coming into the national fisheries. They are docking at the jetties, walking into our land, jumping into taxis, shopping in our supermarkets and our pharmacies. And when they arrive, no customs, no immigration, no COVID testing, no quarantine, and many of them not abiding by the health ordinance. I have no problem with my brothers and sisters of Venezuela, but they're coming into our land when our borders are locked. Some are not going back and they're staying. What is going on in the Prime Minister's constituency is a clear and present danger to our national security, as well as a potential major health and safety issue for the society and for every single citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. All of this, my brothers and sisters, while our nationals are left stranded and languishing in foreign lands, some broke and penniless, whilst they're away from their homes, their families, their jobs, and their loved ones, being deprived of their constitutional right to return to their native land that they so desire. The government continues to leave our borders open to these illegal immigrants, yet they have closed it to our own citizens. Citizens that have contributed to the development of the country, paid their taxes, built their lives and livelihoods here. These citizens have no rights in foreign lands. They cannot work. They have no food, no accommodation. Brothers and sisters, the government has left our citizens stateless, poor and penniless. I ask you again, does this sound like a democracy? Or is our country now moving towards a dictatorship? This is a shameless travesty. I call upon the PNM government to restore the constitutional rights of our citizens and return them to this country. Return them all, not some. Return them now. They do not have the luxury of time. And let me tell you, you can't come and blame Kamala Persad-Bissessar for this one, you know. If our honorable leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar was the Prime Minister today, she would have had compassion for our citizens. She would have done everything in our power to alleviate their suffering. And she would have demanded the results in locking down our borders. Brothers and sisters, this is across every aspect of this country. When we turn to the business side of things, and I look at the business sector, if Kamala Persad-Bissessar was in power today, she would have instilled the confidence in businessmen like myself. Because today, we see the complete collapse and decimation of the small and micro business enterprise in this country. We see even the medium-sized businesses brought to their knees, while a few big business friends and financiers gobble up the spoils of every failed business. We've seen business taxes skyrocketing. We've seen the absence of the availability of foreign exchange. And we see this government not paying the VAT refunds in a timely manner. Can you imagine the Minister of Trade comes to the Parliament to say that one of the PNM strategies to support manufacturers and businesses during the COVID crisis was to clear VAT returns in a substantial way? I don't know whether to laugh, get angry, get sad. How on earth is this a strategy? This is not the government's money. This money belongs to the manufacturers and the businesses across the length and breadth of our sweet TNT. And it must be paid immediately in order to save many businesses that are now on the verge of bankruptcy. Under this PNM government, we see foreigners are bypassing us as an investment destination. Foreign direct investment has been in a negative zone since 2016, after we left office. Our latest data shows that in 2018, foreign direct investment was a negative $701.9 million US dollars, showing that foreign investors have deserted us. But guess what? At least our brothers in Jamaica have taken in more than $700 million. So they're inviting people in, we're running them out. But brothers and sisters, the number one red flag for me in listening to the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, the chambers of commerce throughout the country, and the general business community, including that very well-reputed panel that spoke on the spotlight of the economy on the 28th of September, is the ease of doing business. This is the fundamental issue that is facing the private sector, causing the economy to have declined by 16% from 2015 to 2020 under this PNM. The Minister of Finance said all ministries have to get involved in solving this problem. The question is, why have you failed as a government over the past 5 years, moving us from 63 in the world to now 105? This government has to stop paying lip service to the process and start putting their shoulders to the wheel. You know, this was indeed the position of the Minister of Finance. He said that every single minister has to get involved. He divorced himself from responsibility. In essence, though, at least the Minister of Finance was honest. The Minister of Finance has said, by his admittance, he has said, by indicating the fall of many ministries in the ease of doing business, he's basically conceded that his cabinet has failed. That's the only way I can read it. There has to be a difference between the previous administration and this one, because under the astute leadership of the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar as Prime Minister, we were ranked 63 in the world. We were receiving accolades from the European Union. There must have been something horribly wrong that happened to decline us to 105 since Kamala Persad-Bissessar. What happened, my brothers and sisters, was the mistake and the pandemic of the PNM. Facts are that under this PNM administration, ease of doing business has shamefully plummeted. If you want to do construction, it decreased from 77 to 125. So if you want to improve your manufacturing plant or your factory floor, you now have double the challenge in getting construction permits. Just getting electricity went from 10 to 41, 4 times harder. Getting credit in this country went from 20 to 60. So even if you want to manufacture or you want to invest, you can't get the liquidity. After all, they keep in your VAT money. But here's the one. They did fix one. Resolving insolvency went from 114 up from 77. They had to improve that because so many people are going out of business that one had to be fixed. The banks did what they had to do to get their money back from those people who have gone out of business. We are seeing it now. One only has to walk through any mall through the length and breadth of this country. Take a drive along any commercial center. We see stores close, businesses shut, unemployment rising by the day, and banks foreclosing on your assets. The PNM has failed every single business here today. Now, if I had more time, I would have said a lot more about the manufacturing sector. But I have to make way for my political leader So in closing, elections have a consequence. And if Kamala Prasad Bisesa was your prime minister today, she would have demanded results from her cabinet and helped to solve many of the problems I have discussed. She is a leader with compassion and a leader with a vision. And I continue to support her wholeheartedly as a leader of our great party. My colleague in the Senate once said that the only thing standing in the way of a PNM dictatorship and Trinidad and Tobago maintaining a democracy is this United National Congress led by our honorable leader, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa. We will continue to be the checks and balances of this PNM government. We will continue to expose their lies. It is a difficult task and a hard road we trod on because, my brothers and sisters, in the words of Mark Twain, it is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. The PNM has fooled this nation, but a Kamala Prasad Bisesa-led UNC will expose this treachery every day, every month, and every year until we are led unanimously back into power by our leader and our beloved leader, the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa. And I thank you.
I will fight for you. I always do until my heart is black and blue.
She continues to raise the hard questions that strike right at the heart of our nation. Live from the United National Congress social space, former Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition, Kamala Prasad Bisesa.
I will fight for you. I always do until my heart is black and blue.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, my colleagues here, those who have spoken. Thank you all very much. Chairman Kose, Senator Damian, and former Senator Sean Sobers, Manifa, thank you very much. Friends who are here and friends and family of the UNC at home. Good night again. Welcome to another virtual report from the United National Congress. We are very happy to join you on your devices, in your living room, and of course, wherever you may be locked in and tuned in to this virtual meeting. My colleagues have spoken on some matters. I will share some with other matters, with you, other issues. I see that the party that is seeking to attack us is a party that had secret meetings with Delcy Rodriguez. This is a party whose leader stood up in Parliament and said he had no issue about meeting with narco-traffickers. This is a party who the day after he was elected actually went on TV to say that the rich will get richer. He didn't believe in equity, rich to get richer. This is the same party that presided over $100 million in fake oil. This is a party that up to today cannot explain where $97 million money allocated to salary relief grant, where has it gone, $97 million? But they continue to carry on, and today from several questions asked in the Parliament, we are seeing a pattern of expenditure during the COVID crisis, which as we put all the information together, we will share with you. But it is pointing to where there was clearly discrimination against UNC constituencies, persons residing in UNC constituencies, and in seats where they thought that they had to pump as much money as they could, whether it was for housing, whether it was for their grants, and all the plethora of matters that they gave out money for during that period in election. Do you know something we found out today? That whilst they gave out all these support, food cards and so on, prior to the election, they have now stopped it. They have stopped giving the food cards. And this is at a time when you have far more people on the bread line, no food on their table, off the bread line. They stopped it. Question asked, and they told us, oh, we gave out so much, we gave it out before elections. But since then, they stopped it. So we will expose them. You're right, that's our job. That is the job of the loyal opposition of Trinidad and Tobago. We will continue to expose them in the parliament and outside the parliament. And of course, they're still clueless on COVID. I think we have to remind ourselves repeatedly that COVID didn't crush the economy. It was the PNM who crushed our economy, and they continue so to do. So they thought they were giving us a blie on Saturday in the press conference. The Prime Minister has his usual Saturday press conferences. And last week we were told cinemas could open but no food. And we were told then that by selling the food, this is how the cinemas make the most money. They say restaurants can open only for limited amounts. So there's a kind of confused thinking. There is no clear, rational policy for dealing with COVID. Damien has very strongly and passionately talked about no help still for stranded nationals. What a shameful thing for Trinidad and Tobago when others have brought their nationals back home. Trinidad and Tobago, they promise they will do it, and these are the promises that never materialize. Now, we have been warned in the country for some time now that they were taking us down a dark and dangerous road. The full extent of how they lied to the people of Trinidad and Tobago is now becoming clearer and clearer with each passing day. They lied and said the economy had turned around. They lied and said the treasury was empty, but yet they had billions for things like castles and paintings and renters and roaming bills and so on. They lied and said they didn't know their best friend was selling fake oil. They lied and said the laptop program was bad. Children didn't need it, so what did they do? They scrapped it. They lied and said gas prices they had negotiated didn't cause Point Lisa's to collapse when several plants have been shut down. They lied and said they were doing enough COVID testing, even though we are amongst the lowest test figures in the whole Caribbean. They lied and said Delcy just came to have a chat, and it had nothing to do with secret gas deals to Venezuela. They lied and said COVID is to blame for this poor state of the economy. They lied and said they were not closing down Petrotrin. We must remember that. We must remember that. And even of all these lies, the government, PNM government, saved the biggest lie for after election. And that is what I want to talk a little about tonight. The biggest lie was that they were going to sell Petrotrin to the OWTU, their company, Patriotic Energies Company Limited. That is the biggest lie, biggest hoax that they have perpetrated on the people of Trinidad and Tobago and on the workers of OWTU. And I'll show you why tonight. I have received several documents in my mailbox, which I will share with you. One of them is a document dated October 29, 2020. It is addressed, it comes from Patriotic Energies and Technologies Company Limited. It is addressed to the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of Everything. It is addressed to Senator Honorable Franklin Kahn. It is addressed to the Permanent Secretary Chairman of the Evaluation Committee. It is addressed to Mr. Newman K. George, Chairman of Paria Fuel Trading Limited and Guaracara Refining Company Limited. And of course, Mr. George is also the husband of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And the topic is Heads of Agreement for the acquisition of the refining and logistics assets of Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited by Patriotic Energies and Technologies Company Limited. I have this document, a very important document. This is the last document sent in on the 29th of October by the OWTU through their company. They said, we thank you for your time during our meeting held October 21. As discussed, we have prepared the enclosed heads of agreement to provide a framework for closing on the acquisition of the refinery and the terminal assets. Listen to this. Heads of agreements for the sale of what? The refinery. This is the first time we have confirmation that they're also seeking to buy the terminal assets. Terminal assets, which is Paria, that's the, when you buy the fuel and sell the fuel and so on. First time. This is a proposed transaction, and here are the heads of agreement. So what I've been able to glean from this, I will share with you tonight. A lot of things. I can talk about 5 different issues rather than going through the entire document. There are 5 issues in it. 1, we warned the government not to shut down the refinery because of the job losses directly and indirectly. So 5 issues now. Sale of Guaracara Refinery and Paria Fuel Trading Company. That refinery, an issue was there before about the sale. When Guaracara Petrotran shut down, the assets from the refinery were placed in Guaracara. Terminal assets were placed in Paria Fuel Trading. So what this is now revealing to us is that the proposal was not just to sell the refinery, but also to sell, as I said before, the terminal and the Paria Trading. So what does that consist of? That includes the tank farms, the harbors, the docks, the berths, piping, pipelines, and all machinery and equipment, buildings, roads, and drains, and relevant real estate. This is a sizable asset of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The government indicated the refinery was up for sale, but made no mention that Paria was also up for sale. The Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy on several occasions denied that Paria was for sale. So here we are now, another lie being exposed. On the 16th of March 2019, we heard that Paria was up for sale by none other than Wilfred Espino. You remember him? Remember Wilfred Espino? Even further, an RFP for the sale of Paria was placed in the newspaper. And that was after the RFP for the refinery was sent out. On 18 March 2019, 2 days later, Minister Khan denied it and said, and I quote from Minister Khan, reported in the Express, as Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, I wish to make it clear that the divestment of Paria Fuel Trading Company is not within the current mandate, given by the government to Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited. So he denied it. Even when SPD said it was going to happen, even when SPD, they put it out, an RFP in the newspaper, Minister Khan came and said, no, not happening. This was reported in looptt.com. Government orders retraction on the RFP for Paria Fuel Trading. As Minister Khan said, the RFP was inadvertently issued for the sale of Paria, and then directed the retraction and withdrawal notice. So here it is. They denied it. Not only the minister. On March 21, the Prime Minister stated there is no position taken by the government to sell Paria. Again, reported in looptt.com. So at the highest levels, they continue to fool the population. And I don't know if you're also fooling the OWTU, but you're not selling Paria. The Minister of Finance in a statement issued on 20th September 2019. A few weeks before that budget and the local government elections, he then stated that as a part of the original RFP for the sale of refinery, they were including the assets of Paria. This is after Minister of Energy and Prime Minister denied that they were going to sell Paria. So the second issue I want to raise has to do with the price of the refinery. What is noteworthy in the statement is that Patriotic offered, you remember, $700 million US for the refinery assets, and $300 million for the non-core assets. There was no price in their bid for the Pari assets. I now have a document in my possession, as I said, on the Patriotic Energies letterhead dated 29 October 2020, and I mentioned to you it was addressed to Stuart Young, addressed to Minister Khan, P.S. Vishnu Danpal, Mr. Newman George. It is now discovered from this document that Patriotic has now offered an upfront payment of $500 million for the assets. So before they had offered the $500 million US, they're now offering, they had offered $700 million, now offering $500 million, $200 million less. I have a copy, as I say, draft heads of agreement for the sale of the refinery and Paria to Patriotic. And what is the bid? $500 million US. Based on documents we found, the same documents we found, they now want to pay US $526 million for the refinery. They will pay $500 million in advance. But listen to this. They want the government to foot the bill for their fees and charges in the sum of $26 million US dollars. So in addition to dropping the price that they had offered, they want the government to pay them $26 million. This is far less from their US $700 million offer. It was also stated in the letter that I mentioned that it will cost $500 million US to restart the refinery. And who is willing to provide the financing to restart the refinery? It is a company known as Trafigura. I will speak of them more. And you have heard Anna Roberts many times speak of them. So Patriotic has relied now on a one-page document produced by Deloitte dated 26 October 2020 to show why they can pay $526 million for the refinery. There was no on-site evaluation conducted. Deloitte based their calculation and information provided by Patriotic. Therefore, in total, they're willing to purchase and restart the refinery for a total of US $1 billion. The government rejected Patriotic's deal when they offered the US $700 million. They now want to pay $200 million less to buy the refinery. And then Para is now included in the sale. What is the value of the Para assets? If it is that you were offering for the refinery that price, how come you've been offering a lower price for both the refinery and for Paria? What is the valuation of Paria's assets? How much are they willing to pay for these billion-dollar assets? And we are told, I don't know if it's true, it's alleged, that they never really wanted the refinery. What they really wanted was Paria. They wanted the port and the docks, the birds, the tank farms. And you can see why they may want it, because remember, fuel off Trinidad ended up in Venezuela when it was not destined for Venezuela. So let's talk about the financing of this refinery now, for the purchase of the refinery. Where is Patriotic getting the US $1 billion to purchase the refinery? They do not have the money to purchase. People in this country cannot get $500 US when they want to travel or buy something. Where are they going to get the US $1 billion? We have learned that they have approached RBC to finance the purchase of refinery assets in the sum of US $500 million, which they have offered, and US $500 million to restart is to come from Trafigura. So they approach RBC for $500 million US and Trafigura for the other $500 million US. However, I also have, amongst the documents I received, one from RBC Capital Markets, also dated 29 October 2020, where RBC indicated that they are willing to assist, but they have not confirmed that they will in fact provide the financing of $500 million US for the project. They also give you a 9-month timeline to raise this financing to purchase the assets. There's also an MOU signed on the 28th October 2019 with Patriotic and the Trafigura I mentioned before. This MOU was effective for 1 year to the 27th October 2020. They have now extended that MOU on the 22nd October 20 for 15 months. The MOU will expire in January 2021, before RBC would have raised that first $500 million to purchase the assets. The Trafigura money was for the Paria. This means the refinery is nowhere close to being restarted. There's another issue coming in out of these documents, and they have to do with tax concessions. And these remind me of a sandal scandal all over again. In that MAU, I'm asking whether Trafigura has indicated that they will require exemptions and concessions from taxes, duties, levies, inclusive of taxes on income from Trinidad and Tobago. Another sandals fiasco. So if the government cannot collect taxes from the refinery or Paria, what is the benefit to the people of Trinidad and Tobago? According to the financial statement of Paria 29 September 2019, Paria sales were 7.2 billion in sales and gross profits in the sum of $342 million. That means 100 million in taxes are given to the government. What will happen then is that with the concessions and so on, Trafigura and Patriotic will pay no taxes. When Trafigura wants an exemption from paying all taxes, what will be the benefit to the people of Trinidad and Tobago? Is it true that Trafigura also requires that all its assets of Paria be transferred to them at the close of the agreement to finance the restart of the refinery? All the assets of Paria be transferred to Trafigura. What interest does Trafigura have with Paria? Again, I say it's the port and the tank farms. So that they are so close to Venezuela, Trafigura has indicated that they will provide fuel supply and offtake for the refinery. Why do they want our ports and our tank farms? I ask you to remember what happened just before elections, when the shipment of oil that was bound for somewhere else ended up in Venezuela, just offshore of Trinidad waters. Let's get back to Trafigura, a very troubled company. They have been subject to investigations relating to corruption, market manipulation. They've been warned by the US not to do business with sanctioned companies. They have been embroiled in many controversies: oil for food scandal, waste dumping in Cote d'Ivoire, chemical explosion in Norway, price fixing in Malta, trade of toxic diesel to Africa, Brazilian Operation Car Wash. Why would our government be interested in doing business with this company? Is it because of a close tie to Wilmer Ruperti, you've heard that name, who is affiliated with Trafigura? Do you remember he was the same person involved in the alleged sale of fuel to Venezuela, which almost got a sanction by the US? Is that why, again, Trafigura wants the assets of Paria? I want to ask the government now, are they prepared to sell the refinery in Paria while the assets of those are currently mortgaged to the Bank of New York Mellon? They have mortgaged the assets of Paria, Guaracara, and Heritage for US $1.173 billion. I also have with me from the company's registry a copy of the statement of charge. So that New York Bank Mellon has a charge against the assets of these companies. Now, what does a charge mean? It's like you have mortgaged the assets to this bank for that $1.1 something billion, $1.173 billion. You've mortgaged it. This is a charge as registered in the company's registry. Do you know if you have mortgaged your property, you cannot sell it? You cannot sell it without the consent of the mortgagee. You cannot sell it. You have to satisfy the debt to the person who is holding the mortgage. Mellon, New York Bank. So how can you offer to sell the assets to OWTU for 500 million US, but the debt on the mortgage is 1.173 billion? How are you going to pay it? It will be the people of Trinidad and Tobago who will have to pay this, clear the mortgage before you could sell it. In other words, you couldn't sell it. So you were fooling the people, deceiving the union, deceiving the people of Trinidad and Tobago. When before the election, who was the preferred bidder? Right up to days before August 10th, they were saying it is patriotic. Days after. And then they came after the election, no. Then they said, okay, they'll revalue it. How are you going to revalue it? Where are you going to get $1.173 billion to clear the mortgage when you're only getting 500 US for the refinery? Where and how are you going to do it? And the story doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. In the Sunday Express, there is another charge. Another charge. Okay? There are 2 bond payments for Petrotrin. One was due in 2019, the other in 2022. However, a new bond was issued which will be due in 2026. So how are you going to pay off that bond and be able to still sell it to OWTU? You will have to clear that bond. According to an article written by Kyron Regis in the Trinidad Guardian yesterday, in the Express, I believe it was. Let me pull it up. Too much paper. Article written, Sunday paper. Where is it? Business. Sunday Business. Guardian. Petrotrin bond prospectus shows government misled Patriotic. Administration could not defer payment for refinery. Former minister says Imbert should have known better. Unpatriotic blunder. Unpatriotic blunder. And what this is about is that there is a according to the article, there is a bond prospectus listed on the stock exchange in Luxembourg. It shows that the government is in no position to sell the refinery since the assets are under its charge. The prospectus, which I have a copy of here, dated 13 September 2019, dated September 2019, tells us the government had no legal authority to sell the refinery to anyone. Why? The prospectus lists at page 151 the following. Limitation on asset sales. The issuer will not cause or permit any guarantor to make any asset sale unless the following conditions are met. Now, who is the guarantor? The guarantors are TPHL, Guaracara, and so on. You cannot sell unless these conditions are met. The consideration received for the asset sale is at least equal to the fair market value. We've done no valuations. At least 75% of the consideration received for the asset sale is in the form of cash or cash equivalents, as opposed to capital stock, notes, tangible assets. Therefore, question, what is the fair market value? Was a valuation conducted? And thirdly, who conducted the valuation? When was it done? Is the government in a position to collect 75% of the cash of the sale from the prospective buyer? The documents Patriotic is prepared to offer 500 million, as I told you. But the assets covers only about 50% of the value of the charge on the assets. So how are you going to sell something that's not yours? You took the whole country for a ride with these lies. Just come and vote. Just vote. You'll get that refinery. After you're going to get refinery. When the government had no legal authority to sell the refinery. And this article writing made it very clear yesterday, calling it unpatriotic blunder. And the government knew or ought to have known that they could not sell the refinery. So we will have not long to wait to see what happens. This is another mama guy now that you extend and you want the evaluation committee to look at again, blah, 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 blah. Fooling people, kicking the can down the road. Just keep kicking the can down the road. That's what they're doing. You promised the workers that they will own the refinery, but it will be with a third-party owner. And this goes further, Not just that you can't sell it, but you're not really selling the refinery to the workers. Remember, I told you, traffickers, one of the conditions was the refinery must be transferred to them. So who owns the refinery? It will not be the workers, it will not be the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Why are we selling Paria to Trafigura? Why? Again, a company with a really, really troubled history, with all kinds of deals that went, and who will hold the beneficial interests in the refinery? Which assets belong to the people of our country? Was Patriotic at any time told of the restrictions on the sale? That is on it with the charge, the mortgage, and the bond. Are we setting up the workers? Are you, Rowley, setting up the workers of the country? Are you taking the workers and the union for a ride? This deal is a conspiracy with many who are aiding, abetting, counseling, and procuring. Today, I want to call again on the government, do not sell any state assets without implementing fully, proclaiming and implementing the procurement legislation. You want to sell these two assets, you want to sell out all the NB stations, you want to sell out the port, and you have no procurement legislation in place for disposal of property. The existing CTV legislation deals with acquiring goods and services. It is a new procurement legislation we passed in 2015, which up to 5 years later has not been fully proclaimed, not implemented. I note with great interest that many private sector civil society groups in a joint statement stated they were very disturbed by the lack of progress to implement procurement legislation. The JCC, the TT Chamber of Industry and Commerce, AmCham, TT Transparency Institute, TTMA, FITON, and TT Coalition of Services Industries. Why is the government dragging its feet on the full implementation of the procurement legislation? Why? Why will they not proclaim it? You know why? Because they can have deals that can go down. If you do not have that legislation in place, it will be done through cabinet directive. The legislation was put into place to handle things like these, disposal of public property, the property of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I want to ask the government and the Prime Minister a $1 billion question. Is it true that you already have a buyer lined up for the refinery within 3 months with the finances to purchase and restart the refinery? Is that why you're just kicking the can down the road with Patriotic? Because you can't sell it to them and they do not have the money for the financing or for the restarting of the refinery, given all the restrictions and conditions. If you do, if you know how you can get it to them, please tell the country. Please tell the country how it's going to happen. How are you going to pay the $1.173 billion in charges, in mortgages, bonds, and so on that you owe, where you have the assets as being guaranteed for those loans that you took. So these are very, very important questions. And as I close on that issue, I am very disturbed, and I want to ask, and I think the people of the country should be exceedingly disturbed, not just about this deal, but also about the fact that the IMF had told us that there was something going wrong with our banks. That the banks did not have the level of risk that they should have. If that is the case, I call on the government to tell us. And if you don't tell us, I will reveal the report that I have, a recent report. Now, I don't want to do this because this could cause a run on our banks. And that's the last thing we want now. So tell us, are the monies in our banks, do the customers, the clients, are they at risk? Because I'm told if you have, I think it's up to $75,000, you will one $75,000, not several accounts, only one shot that you may be insured for that. So tell us, is there a problem at this time in our country where the monies of the people of Trinidad and Tobago in banks, in some of the banks, that money is at risk? It's a very, very, very serious issue, and I call on the Minister of Finance to tell us whether he has a report, a recent report, on matters related to the risk levels of various banks in our country. As I close tonight, I want to thank you all very much for again being with us, and since I will not see you, or may not see you, tomorrow we have our virtual Diwali program at my constituency office starting at 6. I will ask you to join us on that virtual space. And so UNC family, I want to spend a few minutes to bring you Diwali greetings. I know many of you will be celebrating at home, not in the way that you would normally celebrate your friends and family, but to all of you, we want to say Shubh Diwali. We know that it's a very important time. It has been a very important community time, family time. It has been important for Hindus and non-Hindus, a time when people come together regardless of race or religion. And let's remember, as we light the diyas this week and some on Saturday, remember that these diyas have the potential to brighten even the darkest moments in your life. Let us keep in mind the massive impact that such a small piece of clay filled with oil can make on the world. So too in our lives and our quest to be good citizens and devotees to the Lord. Small acts of kindness can have a long-lasting massive impact on everyone. So, from my family and from the UNC, I say, may the blessings and protection of Divine Mother Lakshmi bless you, your homes, and your families. Shubh Diwali to all of you. I thank you very much and have a great night.
I will fight for you. I always do until my heart is black and blue. And I will stay with you. We'll make it to the other side like lovers do. I'll reach my hand